Review what we did yesterday, okay, and then we'll try to get some answers. All right, hold on just a second here. Okay, so we have hevei kol adam l'kav zechus. So I was going over this with Chavrusa yesterday, and I don't know if this means anything. I've never noticed before. Hevei kol ha'adam l'kav zechus. All of the person, right? All of the man, right? As opposed to like, what would you expect it to say? Kol adam, right? Every person, and that's in fact how we translated it. As hevei es kol ha'adam, judge every person, right? So I don't know if that makes a difference. I couldn't find any of the mefarshim that talk about it, but judge the entire person. Again, it doesn't seem like any of the interpretations we did. Like, you don't have an obligation to assume that the person is entirely like l'kav zechus based on what we learned yesterday. You have an obligation to like judge their action, you know? So I don't know what to make of it. I just thought I'd point it out. All right. Yeah.
That, like, you shouldn't judge a person like Adam based on any of their actions. What is that? What literally does the cause look mean?
Does the what?
Literally
to the palm or to the scale of merit. And that's based on, you know, the kind of scale that like Lady Justice holds? Like with the two, like that kind of thing, like the two scales. So I assume, maybe this is my assumption. The assumption is like there's a zechus side and a chova side, like a liability and a vindication side, and so you should judge them on the vindication or innocent side.
Well, maybe this doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
Like that you should not judge their person Adam based on any of their actions.
Interesting. So I could see an interpretation that way, right? Like I'm just trying to think of that fit into either Rashi or the Rambam that we did yesterday.
That's even true.
Well, I know it almost fits with the first idea that we did in Pirkei Avos of don't believe in yourself until the day you die.
Yeah.
Of like assuming that you have like a core, like you are a good person at your core or like you're a bad person. But and according to your interpretation, it'd be saying like don't make conclusions about the entirety of the person based on their actions because people are complicated, they change, they have different like good and bad qualities. That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Be critical of their actions, but not of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Not every.
Meaning
the person favorably.
The entirety of the person you should judge favorably, but their actions could be, you know, you can evaluate them on their own. Yeah, that's good. Those are good interpretations. I just have not yet seen any mefarshim who actually even pick up on like the grammatical thing, you know. But I think those are good ideas. Okay, so let's review what we did yesterday. So we had questions. All right, what's the connection between the three clauses, if there is any? What does it mean to judge favorably? Does this express itself in action or only in your mind? What are the parameters, which is really what we discussed mostly yesterday? How far do you have to go to judge someone favorably, or how favorably do you have to judge them? 4, why do you have to judge them at all? Why not suspend judgment? 5, why specify every person? Who is that going to include? 6, who is this Mishnah for? Is it derech ha'am or derech ha'yachid? 7, practically speaking, how can you do this on demand? And 8, why? Like, why should you do this? What's the purpose? So we did Rashi, which is judge every person favorably unless or until you know with certainty whether he intended for good or for bad. Because if you do this, they will judge you favorably from on high, as is stated in the Gemaras and Shabbos, which we're not going to review because that was long, right? So what's the reason given for here? Why should you judge them favorably?
Oh,
God will judge you favorably, yeah. Oh, and yesterday, I think I found the statement that you were referring to.
I also.
Oh, you did? Yeah? Do you remember it? I'm trying to remember it now. Oh. I don't know. Yeah. Anyone who's Mavir Amidosav is hard to translate, right? It's like anyone who like overlooks their like offenses or something like that, then God would like overlook your offenses or something. Yeah. That's good. That's actually a different one than the one I found, but I can't remember the one that I found. I meant to like highlight it, but I forgot where I found it. Okay, so then we have the Rambam, and I made this little chart to try to help us understand the Rambam. Okay, so let me explain. If they're a known tzarich, okay, and they do an ambiguous action, something that could be interpreted 2 ways. What? Yes. Then you are obligated to judge them favorably, and the Rambam said it's usher to suspect them. Okay. Certainly, if he does a seemingly good action, then obviously, like you're not even obligated. You just judge them favorably unless you're messed up. And then, right, and then a bad action. That's the one that's really the chiddush, right? Is that for a bad action? In fact, you just indicate chiddush by making this. It's going to be difficult. Making this bold and red, okay, then that's where you really need to be told to, you have to go out of your way, even if it's far-fetched reasoning, to like interpret it good. If it's a known Russia, so if it's the Chiddush is here, even if he does a seemingly good action, so then you are obligated to, what do you call it? To, hold on here. Then you are obligated to judge them as though they did, it was really bad. Okay, and it is, and then certainly if it's ambiguous or if it is bad. And the Mishnah is talking about this case, the unknown person, which, oh, you know what? Yeah, whatever. I might as well make this red also, because this is really what the Mishnah is talking about, is if it's ambiguous and you don't know the person, so then you are not obligated to judge them in any specific way, but it is midas chasidus, it's going beyond the letter of the law to judge them favorably, and that's really what the Mishnah is telling you to do. Okay, now I forgot if we asked this or talked about this. I think maybe someone asked it at the end. What if it's an unknown person and they do a seemingly good action? Like that's not obviously judged for good, right? Now, what if they do something that is seemingly bad? Like let's take the case, or is that even just what the ambiguous action is? I guess my question is like this: with the ambiguous action, does it have to be equally weighted, or is it just that you could interpret it for good or for bad? Sounds like
you could interpret it for good or for bad. If it's equally weighted, then obviously.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So maybe I don't even need these two columns here, right? It's just
But if it's something that's seemingly bad, like objectively, you see someone hit another person on the street.
Right. No, but isn't that the case of the homeowner and the hired person? Because he was not a chassid. No offense, but right. But the that is true. He did know him. He worked for him for 3 years.
You see a random person.
Yeah, random person. Yeah.
Knowingly bad.
Right. That seems really, really bad. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like with the chasida, then you would judge it even if it's
yeah, meaning I think it is still going to be in the same category. Like the Mishnah would still encourage you to judge it favorably. Yeah, right.
But I don't know. I feel like why would you go so far? Like for the tzaddik, I see it. Like okay, you have to like.
Yeah, right. Because that I guess that'd be the tension then, right? Is that for the tzaddik you could see doing that, but it seems like a conceptually different category if it's for an average person. I got to give you. So I debated whether. Oh, I'll laugh. She's going to want to hear this, but because I have a really good example. But I'll wait. Yeah. Okay. So what question do we have on the Rambam that we haven't answered yet? Yeah. Why? Right. He still hasn't answered the question why you should do this. And did we raise other questions on the Rambam here? Can't remember.
Can you go back to the question?
Why do you have to judge them at all? Yes, right. That's not the question we have to ask. What was that?
With the tzaddik or the Rasha, I could see how maybe your judgment will be beneficial for society. Like if you see them doing something really like bad, that will further that narrative. Like he's a bad dude.
Yeah.
Further the narrative. Like this guy's really like tzaddik. But with a stranger, like who does that benefit?
Okay, good. So it's interesting that you use the words benefiting society because I actually did find one interpretation, which the Rashbats. This is he had a long commentary, and this is the only new part. He says he's here. He says the reason for the entire Mishnah is to benefit society. So you're saying if you are judging a tzaddik favorably, so then that benefits society. That you're saying that it's clear.
Furthers his credibility, and people are going to trust
right.
Him, or you're going to trust
Exactly. In other words, and you see this, by the way, now, not to make this, I don't mean this in a political way, but just in a like cultural phenomenon way, is that you see that there are people now, the tendency now is if you have someone who's viewed as good and they do one bad thing, then like people will just dismiss the entire person, you know, like people do this with the founding fathers, for example, right? It's like how can you possibly say anything good about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson? They were slave owners. They're evil, you know, like, okay, fine. The fact that they own slaves is bad, but the fact that they created the Constitution and set up the United States and like we're good people is good, you know? So like, so I think this counteracts that kind of thing that you're saying is that like, if you allowed people to take assumptions and like run with the bad narratives about the tzaddik, that would be detrimental to society. And then what about I think the Russia also is good, right?
Because maybe some people will go on defending them, like, oh, that was just a one-time thing. So you seeing them continually doing these bad things, like it just furthers the point, like stay away from them.
Yeah. So with Russia, there's even an actual harm that if people start trusting, like in fact, let's look back the way the Rambam's description about the Russia. He says, likewise, if he was a wicked person whose evil actions are publicly known, and afterwards he is seen doing good action, doing an action, whose indications entirely point to it being good, and there's a remote possibility that it's bad, you need to be on guard against him. So he puts it in practical terms that like you have to watch out for this guy. And you can see how that's going to affect society, because if people don't guard themselves from him and they get taken in by like his, like, what might people say when they see this Russia? Like they know he's a Russia, right? So what might they say when they see him like doing good? How might that affect long-term perception? Yeah, he turned over a new leaf, like he changed, like maybe he's like trying to become better, you know, and maybe he is trying to become better, but this is telling you don't make that assumption, okay? Because until you like have verified, like if this person does something good and then like you see them for the next like year that they now have a good track record and they're not bad anymore, so then I think they're not a Russia anymore, you know? Yeah.
But I feel like I was gonna like say that. Like,
Yeah.
if they actually do turn over a new leaf.
Yeah.
But then you have to really know when to put
Yeah, you do. And I think that's why he emphasizes the extreme cases of a well-known Russia and a well-known tzarich, you know, and like other people will fall into the other categories. I wanted to wait till you came back because I had an example. This is not about the Russia, and I actually have to stop recording. Pause recording. Okay, so now let's go back to the question of why, right? Why should he be down the Kafskos? So I like Elisheva's explanation for the tzaddik and the Russia, but now the question is, what about for the average person? How does being down the Kafskos for the average person, let's go to the average person here, help society? Or is there another reason why we should be down the Kafskos for average people?
I feel like kind of a miscellaneous answer.
Yeah.
I was reading this book, Talking to Strangers by Baalei.
Oh yeah, tell me if that's good, because yeah.
So it says like everyone has like a default to truth where like they assume everyone's telling the truth and that's like enough doubts arise about it.
Yeah.
And he's saying how it's good for like society and everything, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to trust anyone and like you wouldn't be able to live a life. And for society and for everyone, it's not beneficial to do that.
Okay, good.
And like for your relationships, it's not beneficial to judge someone not favorably, because usually it is.
Yeah.
Or like,
yeah, okay, good. I think that's a good answer, right? Is that usually people are not doing stuff for evil intent. And therefore, if there's ambiguity, it actually is more probable that they're doing it for good intent. And if you reinforce that assumption by consciously making it, then it will be, then it will ensure that on a society-wide level, like that more people like do that. Yeah, that's good.
So what about for sure good action or for sure bad action?
So if it's for sure good or for sure bad, I think that's where the Torah draws the line. Because if it's for sure bad, then why would you not be obligated to judge it as good? No. Yeah, because then you'd have to like warp your mind, you know, to like let's say like you see someone murdering someone else with a knife. Oh, they're just trying to like, you know.
Yeah, their new knife.
Exactly. Yeah.
They can't see you.
Yeah. In other words, like well, the place. Yeah. There was what. Yeah, there are a lot of bad explanations you could come up with. But the point is that the Torah is only trying to get you to take control of your assumptions, but not your perception, not your actual like knowledge and perceptions. Like that would be like brainwashing, you know?
But it seems like saying you should do that.
Well, again, see, in the case of even in the tzaddik, that's a good question, right? Yeah, that is a good question, right. So because
the example you gave, like you did do, like your thought process was correct. Like even if she was a tzaddik, I still think you should have thought that.
Right. See, I guess that in the examples of the Gemara, they all involve things that you couldn't see, right? For example, like let's say like when the rabbi like had the woman captive and locked the door in his room, you know? So you can't see what's going on there, and so you don't know it. But if they saw him doing something inappropriate, so then like I don't think like yeah. So then what would this halacha require? Because we would not require them to like assume that he's not doing the action, because you're seeing him do the action, you know?
Yeah, and if you see him deliberately violating halacha,
Yeah.
then you can't really. I don't think there's any way that you can interpret.
Well, you could always see, that's the thing though, right? You could always.
If you saw a rabbi murdering someone,
Yeah, right.
What do you do?
Right, because there are ways to be done the Zechus there even for that, right? You could say that this person was like, you know, threatening to kill them, or right. So the question is, so that I think this is the question, right? Is that how far do we stretch these parameters, right?
Like, what's the main distinction between the average person's judgment and
right? Well, the main distinction that the Mishnah is making is whether you're obligated or not, right? That seems to be the only distinction. But then the question is, if you're gonna do the dan l'chafs for the average person, it seems like you should go as far as for the tzarich, but then it seems like that's irrational, right? Like, yeah, right. If it's so far, I mean, yeah, maybe irrational is too strong of a word. In other words, like, if he's murdering someone, then yes, it's.
Human beings, you're supposed to think based. Obviously, you're going to think based on your own like preconceived notions. And things you know in the past. If someone's running at you with a knife, you're assuming they're trying to kill you.
Yeah, right.
And that's
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so that's okay. That's actually a good parameter, by the way, which is that I don't think any of this is. I think all of this is talking about like how you judge them in your mind. I don't think this means that you make decisions differently if there is like danger or risk involved. You know, for example, like if this is a kind of a bad example, but like let's say someone who's known to be a tzarich gives you advice to invest in a company that's sketchy. Okay, so I don't think you'd have to say like, I'm going to be down the cops and assume that he did all of his research and he's only like telling me this because like he wants me to make money, you know, like you should assume definitely that he's not doing it like to make you lose money, but you can assume that like maybe he doesn't know that this is a sketchy company or whatever, you know, like I don't think you have to like actually adjust your actions.
Murdering example,
yeah.
Let's say, what do you say? You could call the police because that's what you would do, but you shouldn't assume in your head that he's guilty.
Yeah, I think that that's what I think. And even though I haven't seen anyone say that outright, I feel like it's just that is going too far. If you're going to actually like make different decisions based on this, that could, especially that involve harm, you know.
I don't know. I feel like the whole point of this Mishnah is to get you thinking in every situation. Like not necessarily that you have to. In some situations, I think that you should act in a way that is in line with the Doma Kafka.
Well, let's ask about the case in the Gemara, okay, about where the average person. So in the homeowner worker case, okay, so we use the Dina and Eliana, and Eliana was the worker, right? So is this Mishnah suggesting that Eliana should not take her to court? No, right? She has entirely within her legal rights to say, I worked for you for 3 years and you owe me 3 years worth of wages, you know? So you could still take her to court, but I think the Dan l'chafs comes in like saying, okay, fine, you were not doing this maliciously, you weren't doing this in order to like, you know, do stuff, but like it doesn't change the reality of like the practical like decision making, you know? Just like I'm not gonna assume that you're just like being greedy and you know, getting 3 years of free labor from me, you know? That's what I assume. And I'm assuming that I'm not getting that from the Rambam. I'm getting that from the fact that like I just can't imagine it being otherwise, that you're supposed to just like.
Then you're not really being done with.
You are, but you're doing it about intent, you know?
Justice.
Yeah, it goes against right. Right. If it goes against the actual justice or actual halacha, then it would draw the line, you know. But you still are judging them properly in terms of intent, you know. Like she was not doing this to swindle me. She was doing this because she really did want to pay me, but like this good deal came along, or like she wasn't thinking properly, or she mismanaged her money, you know. That's how I'm taking. I would like to find evidence to support this theory, but you know, but I right now I think that makes sense.
The benefit, like I was saying, like a mistake idea, and it reminds me of another one.
Yeah.
It could be more like about how you don't know their intention.
Yeah.
So like the most beneficial thing for you is to assume it's a good thing. because if you jump too far to assume it's bad, that will harm you. You'll be looking at it in the wrong way.
Okay, how will it harm you? I think that's a good way of thinking.
It'll harm you because it may cause you to do something to them.
Right. Yeah. So there's a okay. I'm gonna give my interpretation, which I think that is an aspect of, and tell me if you think it's a different idea. If it is, we'll explore it on its own, right? So let's go back to the question really quickly about why can't you just suspend judgment? Okay. So what do you say? Why don't you just suspend judgment?
You have to know how to act. I mean, maybe this is about judgment as a person, not an action.
Yeah.
You have to know how to relate to the action.
Okay, that's true. But if what we're saying is true, then you're going to still make practical decisions independent of this.
I don't think that's the thing, though. I don't think there's such a thing as suspending
Yeah.
judgment. Like human nature.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Exactly. Right. So I think the reason why you can't just suspend judgment is human beings will naturally create narratives. Okay. And it is maybe it's theoretically possible, like for a person who's on a high level, to completely suspend judgment and say, I don't know, but we're certainly not wired that way. Like we fill in gaps, and create stories and make assumptions about that. And not only that, this is something that I think is actually, some of you might argue with this. So I'm going to back it up with Koheles. Okay. There's a pasuk in Koheles that says, Re'isi ani es kol amal. So what is it? Yeah, all of the toil, right? They call kishon hamase. I have a hard time translating kishon hamase, but what would you guess that means? Like kasher.
Right?
Yeah, it's like, it has to do with upright. Okay. So I translate it as acts of improvement or improvements of action. Okay. That is kinas ish mirehu. What's kina? Jealousy. Okay. There's the jealousy of one person for his fellow. Gam ze hevel uzruach. This is also futile and frustration of spirit. So Ibn Ezra says like this, Reisi, rov kol amal adam, most of man's toil, gam kishon maasehem.
And
Yeah, even or also their acts of improvement. Ba'avur b'nei ha'adam. Yeah, say again? Are for other people, for the sake of other people. Okay, how so? She's kanu zebezeh. They're jealous of one another. Okay. V'yirtze lihispa'er al chavero. They want to, glorify themselves over their friend. Okay. V'shelo yihi echasar mimeno. They don't want to be lacking than him. B'diraso u'malbusho u'banav u'ma'achalo v'chachmaso v'tuv Hashem. Okay, I didn't mean to italicize these. Whatever. So what according to Ibn Ezra, what is the pasuk saying? Yeah. Okay. Now again, that's a very Kohelsi type thing. Yeah. Right. But it's even worse because it's not even. It's an inferiority complex, right? Because it's not even about survival. It's just wanting to glorify yourself above the other person. I want to feel better, like I'm a better person than other people. So like, psychologically, I think people operate. The average person operates in, or even superior people operate in a relative value system where you're constantly like measuring yourself against other people and like making yourself feel good because of other people's like deficiencies. So like, when you see someone doing something bad, then you're like, oh, I would never do that, or like, or you draw conclusions about their entire like personality based on the observation of their action. Like, let's say, for example, you see like a parent like screaming at their kid, right? So I don't know about you, but like, what might most people assume? They're a bad parent, right? But what could you assume if you were being down the opposite close?
They did something really dangerous.
Kid only
Yeah.
listens when the parents do.
Okay, right. Maybe this kid needs it. Maybe like the kid did something really bad. Maybe the parent is having a bad day, and like this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like maybe the kid like kept them up all night, and not that means that their behavior is good, but it doesn't mean that they're a bad parent categorically. So why do people assume that? Because I think they want to feel like I would never do this if I were a parent, and like. And like this person is just is no good. So if you combine these two things, the fact that human beings by nature want to create narratives, and human beings by nature want to feel better than their fellow human being. So what's going to end up happening by default? Yeah, you're going to create narratives that make you feel better.
We learn in this theater, like people will like put themselves above other people, like. And they won't even realize, like, you'll say, let's say you went to sleep, like, at 3, you're like, oh, at least, like, your baby wasn't waking you up. Or, like,
So that you put yourself like
as more important. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then that's a good example because it's in subtle ways that like you create the narrative.
Realize.
You don't realize you're making a value judgment, when you do it. So that's why you can't just suspend judgment. Now, how is this connected to what Elisheva said? So what I want to argue here is that in a Mishlaic sense, but I was thinking on a Mishlaic sense for the sake of society, okay? Society is going to run better and it's going to affect your interactions better if you're generous in creating narratives for people that don't put them in a bad light. So first of all, it's going to help you break out of that value system where you're constantly like trying to feel better than the other person. In other words, if whenever you see someone do something that could be bad, if you train yourself to think not that they're doing bad and therefore you're better than them, but like, oh, they're also trying to do good. And they're also like, that like we're all in this, you hold them to the same standard that you would hold yourself to. Like you want to judge yourself favorably, and you would want other people to judge you favorably. So it creates a much better society for people like interacting with each other in positive ways, for people not being stuck in a relative value system, for people not looking for opportunities to cause to cause their fellow person to fail so that they can gloat over them, So I think, so in other words, it all stems from this thing that there is a default that I want to create a narrative and I want to feel better than the other person. And that's what this mission is like combating. And this is why for a tzarich, it's extremely like damaging to society if people will be dan l'kaf chova for a tzarich. Okay, why? Like what's going to happen imagine what happens to Jewish society when like anytime a tzarich does something that could be interpreted for bad, that people like are quick to like create a bad narrative. How's that going to harm society? Yeah, is that first of all, it closes the gap between like I think people like the feeling people have is aha, like exactly, like you're eager to see them fail because it also makes you feel better about your own faults. It makes you feel more comfortable about not striving for that goal because like, oh, even that guy can't do it, and like it creates it breaks the image of the inspirational figure. I'll give you an example of this that I'd be surprised if you heard about this. There's a book called The Making of a Gadol. Yeah?
I just talked about this last night.
Did I talk about it last night? Oh,
Yeah.
that's where, yes. Okay, that's where we talked about it. Yeah, okay. For some reason, yes, I thought that was my other share. Yeah. So I brought this up in my Mishlei share last night, which is this book that was about Gedolim, about like these great tzaddikim. And people got mad at the book because it tried to portray them in a real light, like not just like a glorified like saint, but like the good and the not good. Try to like humanize them.
I thought it was only stories about things that they did
No. It was trying to create an accurate picture instead of like an article biography. Where it's like only good stuff. And people got really, really mad. And again, that's because like I think that what was I going to say? That it shatters like the ideal that people are striving for when they think about a tzaddik, Now the Torah doesn't take that approach because the Torah obviously like does talk about the faults of tzaddikim. But I think in real life, if like there's someone who was universally admired for being good and they did something bad, it would be damaging for like Torah if because it would hurt people's perception of like the perfection that they're striving for, And what would happen if people were dan l'kaf zechus to the Russia?
People start accepting Russia's actions and
yeah, in other words, like part of what we want to do with big Rishaim is create a taboo that we don't want to be like this person at all. And if they start doing good stuff, it humanizes them, which might be more realistic, but it's bad for society in terms of people like feeling like identifying with them and like and justifying their actions, right, is like, yeah, exactly. So I think like on a society-wide level, then it's a good practice to be dan l'kaf zechus for everyone. But it's critical on a society-wide level to not be dan l'kaf chova for a tzaddik and to not be dan l'kaf zechus for a Russia, because that's like actually damaging. For average person, it just creates a better environment, And that's why this midas chasidus, because I don't think, first of all, I think it's very hard for everyone to do, but it's an ideal that like people should strive to do. You couldn't impose on everyone to like not be judgmental. Like that's just, that's swimming upstream. Yeah.
Well, I hear this, and it might be the same, but might not. I was focusing more on the fact that you don't know people's intentions, like the Mishnah did. Like people don't know what you're thinking. Don't assume they know you're thinking.
Right.
On the same note, don't assume what they're thinking. And I was thinking of it more how when we focus on justice in this system, like we're not God, we don't know intentions.
Right. Yeah.
So justice is just based on objective behavior.
I see. Yeah. That
like,
is.
Maybe when you're looking at someone's behavior, you could acknowledge it's a bad thing, but don't jump to assume intentions.
Okay, good. And I think maybe that is what Rashi was getting at. We kind of wondered this when we first read the Rashi. Rashi does put the emphasis on nischaven latova or l'ra'a, that whether he intended for good or for bad. Whereas Rambam puts more of emphasis on interpreting the behavior, like the action itself, you know? Yeah. And were you also saying earlier, I do think it is a different idea now, but were you also saying earlier that it is more beneficial for you as a person if you do this?
I was thinking that at first, but now no.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone I heard you say, I think it's more beneficial for society.
Yeah.
The system that God put into place, us as human beings that don't know others' intentions, you never will.
Yeah.
And you only can focus on what you objectively see. Like even when you like punish someone for their intention, they have to verbalize it. They have to say.
Yeah. In fact, now that you're talking in this direction, it makes me think of the fact that like that's what we do in courts, right? Like it could look a lot like someone did something really, really bad, but like leave it to the courts to decide. And this is almost trying to like expand that mentality to the average person to like, okay, fine. We don't know people's intentions. If you see them do the behavior, then that's one thing, but like, then that's actually, being a witness, but like, you can't, only God can judge people's thoughts and intentions.
It's hard for people in human nature to separate what they're assuming was behind the behavior and the actual behavior. So I think this is like the Torah telling us to take that extra step.
Yeah.
Like separate the behavior itself from the root of it.
Yeah.
This isn't therapy. This is like
exactly. Yeah. So okay. So now can we take that one step further and explain the Rashi about how God will judge you favorably based on this? I don't know.
Because God had that knowledge of the intention. He's the only one that could truly judge favorably.
Right, but how is it saying that if you do this, if you judge people favorably in this way, then God will judge you favorably in this way? Like, what is that? See, in other words, like actually that helps me formulate the question. In other words, like this: God rewarding you for doing this, that I understand, right? But God changing His judgment of all your other actions, that was the part that gave us trouble yesterday.
Maybe God will see you as a defender of objective justice. And
okay.
When you do things, you're really trying to be in line with that objective justice, even if your intention ends up being
okay, I like that direction. Yeah.
By acknowledging that you don't have like God's knowledge, you're aligning yourself with His will.
Okay, yeah. So let's just talk this out in terms of the person who's not doing this and the person who is doing this. So the person who is not fulfilling Pirkei Avos is going around playing God in a sense.
Assuming their version of reality is
exactly, assuming that their assumptions about what's going on in people's heads is actually real, right? And the person who is implementing this is trying to cultivate a focus where they realize that people have internal worlds, but I just don't know what that is. And like the main thing is to focus on doing good actions and avoiding bad actions
that are in line with the Torah.
That are in line with the Torah, right? And so then what's going to change in terms of so how is God going to respond to those two individuals differently?
I think there's two ways. I think through her call it, if you're acting as a just person, not getting involved in like justice more than you should, then things will work in line with justice because you're letting God deal with it.
Yeah.
And hashkafa pratis because you're also
it's like his value.
Need things like you're letting.
It's his value system. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like God will know, but it will be clear that when you do do a bad action.
Yeah.
That God will just judge your intention because He knows that you're someone that stands up for doing the right thing.
Right. In other words,
Torah.
Yeah.
Even if your intention was bad, like God will only judge intention and not necessarily focus on action.
Yeah. Intention and not action. That's interesting. I thought it was the opposite.
God won't judge your intention because He knows in general you're looking at
the actions. Yeah. That's what I thought you were saying earlier. I think this is a good idea. I just wanted to talk it out, right? That a person who is striving to make life about actions and putting their emphasis on justice in action, then, in other words, if you make everything about intentions that people have, so then you're very caught up on intentions, and we're saying God will then hold you to that standard. See, I'm still caught up on,
Like intention is where you should be.
because I think, yeah.
Because you're judging people like favorably, meaning that you're changing the way you might have thought of their intention of what they're doing. Like, because you don't see that.
But Elisheva wasn't saying that, right? You were saying you're separating the intention from the action.
Just focus on the action as an objective thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
How
the
to
same
help
thing that when God
with
judges you, like he sees that.
That's
your
what I'm trying to figure
actions
out.
are like you. Like you could do something wrong, but that's not necessarily who you are. Like that's what tshuva is. Like you separate yourself from the action.
Right.
Of your own, like,
See, but now we're waffling between like, is God judging you based on your intention or your actions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm gonna say maybe God, he sees you as a person that looks at the action on its own merit. So when you choose to do an action,
Yeah.
you're looking at it on its own merit as it fits in with Torah.
Yeah.
So even if you mess up, God will see that you're striving to look at the objective.
Right.
good.
And even if your
Even
if your intentions are not good,
Yeah.
because
So
you're
that's why I think
yeah.
If your intention ends up being off, he knows that you're looking at the action on his guidebook.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
up for other people's actions. Like if your own actions.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, but because what Eliashev's argument is that by training yourself to do this for other people, it does change your perspective about like your own actions, about like that the actions are really the primary thing. Not that intentions don't matter, but that the actions are the thing that actually impacts society, on a fundamental justice level.
But if you do a bad action, if you do a good action, but your intentions are bad,
That's
sometimes
what
I'm not gonna
God
judge you on your intentions, bad, like.
No,
No, but isn't there a whole thing that if you like when you're, let's say someone like something to you, like they didn't give you a shovel or something like that, right? And then you lend it to them and you're like,
yeah,
oh, here's the shovel, but you didn't give me yours. Like
right.
that's saying your intention is bad. You're doing a great action because you're giving them your lending
Right,
them so much
yeah.
more.
I mean, I guess that case happens to be a good question simply because that's an actual losase of like bearing a grudge. Yeah.
Go through cases that I feel like show the opposite of this, like the sota. Like that case is like someone who is guilty is perceived guilty because of their actions.
Yeah.
And they're judged for their intent.
That's a good question.
And then they're proven innocent.
Right. That's a really good question, right?
And also the case about the Rishon, like the person who comes into court is Russia until.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's yeah. The Sota though is a really good question because there it's exactly like the case in the Gemara, where he was wrong for secluding himself with that woman, the matron woman, right? But like, it doesn't necessarily mean that he actually like did the action that they suspected him of doing, and that's exactly the case in the Sota, where she was wrong for being in yichud with a guy, but like
I think the difference is that it's God's assumptions, not yours, because he set out the framework for those assumptions. If this happens, she's in a room with this guy at
Yeah,
this
but you're
time.
talking about what
The-
shovels are doing.
and the husband's the one who initiates it though, right?
Okay,
So-
don't they both have to agree in order for they?
Yeah, right. That's true, right. But in other words, I guess another way of saying what you're saying is if the Sota husband was following this principle, he would not do the entire Sota thing with his wife because, yeah, right, yeah.
Well,
That's
there's
good.
a line where it's like the doubt and I don't know, there's a line and maybe like that's when it's affecting your option.